This is a true story, and it shows why you don't mess with God. There are stories we tell to entertain. There are stories we tell to move us. And there are stories that we tell to warn us. What you are about to hear is real. It wasn't created. It wasn't invented. It wasn't exaggerated. It happened. And it happened to someone who believed that certain things had no consequences, that certain words had no weight, that certain limits didn't exist. There are many things in this world that we can question, many ideas that we can debate, many opinions that we can disagree with, but there are limits that were established not by men, but by something much greater. And one of those limits is God. You may not believe it. You may have doubts. You may be searching for answers. That's human. That's understandable. But to mock, to arrogantly challenge, to treat the sacred as a joke, that's different. Our character didn't have a different name. He didn't have an extraordinary story. He wasn't famous nor influential. He was just a man, an ordinary man. He woke up at 6 in the morning every day. He drank his coffee without rushing. He left for work before 7. He returned in the late afternoon tired. He ate dinner in front of the television. And he went to sleep thinking about the next day. A routine, a life, an existence like so many others. But there was something about him. Something that became clear when certain subjects came up. Something that revealed itself in the way he spoke, in the way he laughed. He didn't take faith seriously. And more than that, he didn't respect those who did. Whenever someone talked about faith, he rolled his eyes. When someone mentioned prayer, he smiled wryly. When the subject was God, he simply laughed. To him, all of that was weakness. People who needed emotional crutches. People who didn't have the courage to face reality. He would say with conviction, "Faith is for those who are afraid to live." And he would add, "I don't need an imaginary God to feel safe." When friends talked about miracles, he would interrupt. Coincidences, nothing more. When colleagues commented on spiritual experiences, autosuggestion, cheap psychology. But his favorite phrase, the one he repeated most often, the one he thought was the most intelligent, was this: "If God exists and is as powerful as they say, He knows where to find me." And he laughed. He found his own audacity amusing. He felt courageous, superior, free. What he didn't know is that words have weight, even when said in mockery. Especially when said in mockery. The people around him reacted in different ways. Some laughed along uncomfortably. Others quickly changed the subject. Some tried to argue but gave up. And there were those who simply remained silent. A heavy silence. A silence that spoke louder than 1,000 words. His mother, a woman of deep faith, used to just lower her head. She didn't argue. She didn't confront. She just prayed silently. Once she said to him, "Son, you may not believe, but don't mock. Please don't mock." He replied ironically, "Mother, if your God is offended by words, He's not that strong." She didn't answer. She just sighed and continued praying. There wasn't an exact moment. It wasn't a specific day. It was gradual, subtle, almost imperceptible. In the beginning, they were just small discomforts, an inexplicable restlessness, a weight on his chest that appeared without warning. The silence of the house began to bother him, something he had never noticed before. Suddenly it seemed deafening. The nights became longer, the darkness denser, sleep more distant. He found himself lying in bed, eyes open, staring at the ceiling, trying to understand what was happening. Thoughts began to surface, thoughts he had never had before, questions that had never bothered him. What if I'm wrong? What if there's something more? What if my words have been heard? He tried to laugh at these thoughts, to push them away with the same arrogance as always, but something had changed. The laughter no longer came so easily. Trust wasn't so solid anymore, and the discomfort, It only grew. It was a Tuesday, a night like any other, or at least it should have been. He had eaten dinner normally, watched television for a few hours, and went to sleep around 11 o'clock at night. Sleep came quickly, without dreams, without disturbances, just the emptiness of tiredness. But then, something changed. His eyes opened suddenly. It wasn't gradual. It wasn't natural. It was instantaneous, as if something had ripped him from his sleep. The room was dark, completely dark. He looked at the digital clock on the bedside table. 3:17 in the morning. His heart was racing, beating strongly against his chest. It was as if he had run a marathon, but he hadn't moved. He was just lying there. There was something different in the air, a feeling he couldn't name. It wasn't cold. It wasn't hot. It was presence. He tried to calm down, to breathe deeply, to rationalize. It's just tiredness, he thought. Work stress. Nothing more. But his heart didn't slow down, and the feeling didn't disappear. The silence in the room was absolute. There was no wind. There was no car noise. There was nothing. Only silence. And in that silence, he felt he wasn't alone. It wasn't a physical presence. No one had entered the room. There were no shadows moving. There were no strange sounds. But he knew, with a certainty he couldn't explain. He simply knew. There was something there, watching, waiting. His chest began to tighten. His breathing became difficult. His hands began to sweat. And for the first time in his adult life, he felt real fear. And then, in the midst of that fear, a memory surfaced. His own words, said so many times, with such conviction, with such arrogance. If God exists, He knows where to find me. And now, lying in the dark, with his heart racing, afraid to open his eyes completely, those words echoed. He had defied. He had mocked. He had laughed. And now, maybe, just maybe, he had been found. He had never prayed. He didn't know how. He didn't know the right words. He hadn't memorized any prepared phrases. But at that moment, with fear consuming every cell of his body, with the invisible presence filling the room, he didn't need a manual. He didn't need a ritual. He didn't need a church. He just spoken. It was a whisper, almost inaudible, trembling, sincere. If the Lord is there. Pause. Deep breath. Tears beginning to form in his eyes. Help me. That's all. 2 words. Simple. Direct. True. And then, he waited. There was no light from heaven. There was no thundering voice. There were no angels or visions. But something changed. The fear didn't disappear immediately, but it began to diminish, slowly, gradually. The feeling of presence was still there, but it had changed in nature. Before it was threatening. Now it was different. He couldn't explain it, but he felt it. His breathing began to normalize. His heart slowed. The muscles relaxed. And for the first time in weeks, he managed to sleep. A deep sleep. No nightmares. No restlessness. When he woke up, the sun was already high. He had slept in late. Something rare for him. For a moment, lying in bed, he tried to remember if it had been a dream. If that early morning had really happened. But there was no doubt. It had been real. As real as the pillow under his head. As real as the air he breathed. He woke up different. He couldn't explain how. But something inside him had changed. The arrogance had left. And in its place, there was respect. The days that followed were of silent observation. He began to notice things he had previously ignored. The sunrise through the window. The bird song in the morning. The complexity of a simple flower. Things that had always been there, but that he had never truly seen. At work, when colleagues started conversations about faith, he no longer laughed. He didn't interrupt. He just listened. When someone mentioned prayer, he didn't make jokes. He remained silent, respectful. His mother was the first to notice. On a Sunday visit she asked, "Son, you're different. Has something happened?" He hesitated. How could he explain something he didn't fully understand himself? How could he put into words an experience beyond words? Finally he simply said, "I was wrong, Mom. About many things." She didn't ask anything else. She just smiled. And silent tears streamed down her face. As the weeks passed, he began to understand some things. He understood that God doesn't need to prove anything, that His existence doesn't depend on our understanding, that His greatness isn't diminished by our doubt. He understood that faith isn't a spectacle. It isn't a light show. It isn't entertainment. He understood that mockery isn't courage, that challenging the divine isn't bravery, that laughing at the sacred isn't intelligence. It's just ignorance. He understood that there are forces in this universe that can't be seen with the eyes, that can't be touched with the hands, that can't be explained by science, but that can be felt deeply, undeniably. For the first time in his life, he picked up a Bible, not to mock, not to criticize, but to read. And he found passages that seemed written for him. Do not be deceived, God is not mocked. The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. Be still and know that I am God. Each word seemed to resonate. Each verse seemed like an answer. Each chapter seemed like a revelation. This story doesn't speak of punishment. It doesn't speak of divine retribution. It doesn't speak of a vengeful God. It speaks of limits. There are limits in the universe. Physical limits that we know. The speed of light, gravity, the laws of thermodynamics. But there are also spiritual limits. Limits we don't see, but which are equally real. And one of these limits is respect for the sacred. This story speaks of consciousness, of the moment we realize that we are smaller than we thought, that the universe is bigger than we imagined, and that there are mysteries that deserve reverence. We live in an age of skepticism, an age where everything is questioned, an age where mockery is seen as intelligence, social media full of jokes about faith, television programs ridiculing believers, people competing to see who makes the most daring joke. And there are those who applaud, who find it funny, who consider it progress. But this story reminds us that some things are bigger than trends, bigger than opinions, bigger than ourselves. If you've made it this far, thank you for your attention. Perhaps you've never mocked God. Perhaps you've always treated faith with respect. Perhaps you are a person of deep conviction. Or perhaps you recognize yourself in this story. Perhaps you've laughed when you shouldn't have. Perhaps you've mocked when you should have respected. Perhaps you've treated the sacred as a joke. If it's the second case, know that it's not too late. God doesn't need our excuses, but we need our humility, not out of fear, but out of conscience, because in the end, what we do with words matters. What we do with the faith of others matters. And how do we deal with what we don't understand? It matters. This is not a story to scare you. It's a story to warn you, to remind you, to raise awareness. There are things in this world that you don't play with, things that deserve our reverence, our respect, our humility. And one of those things is God. You don't play with God. If this story touched your heart, share it with someone who needs to hear this message.